actually running now. Hopefully they can hear me. But first up, intros. I mean, I kind of know you guys, and I kind of don't, because this is the first time we're all together in this setting, at least with me. You guys probably all know each other pretty well. Yeah? No? Yeah? No? 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 Come on, man. All right. Well, let's do some intros. Bailey, let's start with you. I know you're Bailey.
What would you like me to tell you?
Okay, that's a good thing. We should do icebreaker questions, right? Those are always good. So actually, maybe we'll start with me. What are three good questions that we can come up with that we can all answer that are foolishly funny and yet interesting? How about what's your favorite animal? How long have you lived where you live right now? And if you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? Those cool questions? Okay. Well, Pastor Scott, I have lived here for almost 8 years. Prior to that, I spent 2.5 years living up in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. And prior to that, I spent my whole life up in the Okoboji area. So I'm from Iowa originally, and now I'm still in Iowa. What else did I say? Let's see, my favorite animal? Probably like meerkats, because they're amazing and they're funny. Although red pandas are also amazing. Are you guys familiar with red pandas? They're kind of like a big panda, only smaller. They sort of look like a cross between a panda bear and a raccoon. They're amazing. Have you ever seen Kung Fu Panda?
A little bit.
Okay. Remember Shifu, the master? Yeah. He's a red panda.
Ah.
Yeah. Okay. See, look at this. We're already off on weird tangents. And anywhere I could go in the world, I would love to go to Scotland. I think it would be cool. Cool. Yeah. All right. Bailey, back to you.
I've lived where I live now for I think this year it'll be 3 years.
Nice.
And
favorite animal?
Probably my rabbit.
Your rabbit. Rabbits are fun. Nice. And if you could visit anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Italy.
Italy. Oh, eat lots of spaghetti there?
Sure.
That sounds good. Awesome. Awesome. Julia, over to you.
The house I live in now, I think I've lived in it for 4 years maybe.
Nice.
My favorite animal is a dog. And if I could go anywhere, I'd go to Hawaii.
Hawaii. I'm actually talking about going to Hawaii right now. My wife wants to go there for our anniversary.
My neighbor just came from Hawaii.
I know. In fact, I was seeing some of their Facebook posts this morning. So that's kind of fun. Cool. What kind of dog? Any specific ones or just dogs in general?
Probably a lab.
Labs? Nice. Okay. What color of lab? See, we can take this all day, can't we?
I don't know.
You don't know? Any lab, huh? That's cool. That's cool. Riley, how about you?
My name is Riley, and I think I've been living in it for this house for 5 years.
Nice.
So I used to live in Underwood.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just live out in the country by Underwood. And my favorite animal is a cheetah.
Cheetah, oh nice.
And if I could go anywhere, I'd go to probably like Canada or Norway or somewhere like cold.
Somewhere cold. Are you a skier?
No.
No.
But I want to try it.
You want to try it?
Yes.
So you just like the cold weather?
Yeah, I kind of like being in like a forest.
Okay, so you're a winter kind of a guy.
Yeah, kind of.
Nice. So you must have liked this last few weeks that we've had.
Except I had to be gone in Florida.
That's right. You were gone, weren't you?
Yes.
Oh, man. Okay, cool. John?
I've been living in this house for almost a year and a half. My favorite animal is a white-tailed deer.
Nice.
And I would probably go to Germany.
Germany. Okay, what's the draw of Germany?
I don't know. I have a lot of German heritage, so.
Nice, nice. I would like to see Germany as well. I would like to visit all of those places. I think it would be really cool. I'm all about travel. I think seeing the world is awesome. But yeah, cool. So, okay, thank you for that introduction. Hopefully we will continue to get to know each other well through this this time that we're going to spend together. How about highs and lows? What's been good this week? What hasn't been so good this week? John, I'm going to pick on you first because you've been through this before. How's the week been?
Snowy.
Snowy,
muddy.
muddy, more muddy because the snow is really dissipating fast, isn't it? Yeah. Cool. So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Probably a good thing because we're getting into spring here soon.
We are getting into spring. Days are getting longer. It's getting warmer. These 50-degree days that we've had have been kind of gorgeous, haven't they? Yeah. Anything not so good?
Probably the mud.
The mud. Have you killed your brother lately?
Actually, this morning I have.
He has. Okay.
This morning.
Inside joke, guys. So this is a preview to when we talk about the Ten Commandments, which we actually have already. We had a video on that here, I don't know, what, a couple months ago? And why do we say that?
Because when you're getting angry at your brother or anyone, you kind of kill them in your mind, I guess.
And who told us that?
You.
Who else? Where did I get it from?
The Bible.
And who? Church answer.
Moses? God?
Getting closer. Which one? He's got a sweet beard, we think.
Oh, Jesus.
He had a really bad day right before Easter.
Jesus.
Yeah. Jesus tells us that when we're angry with our brothers or sisters, it's the same as committing murder. So when we learned about that, we started joking that John always kills his brother on almost a daily basis. Have any of you ever killed your siblings?
Daily.
Daily. Nice. I like your honesty. That's good. Thank you. Okay. Cool. What else has been good? How you guys doing?
My brother had a birthday.
Yep.
So he had.
How old is he now?
He just turned 7.
Holy smokes.
But the bad side is he invited some of his friends over and they were very crazy.
Oh yeah. Well, little brothers can be like that. As a little brother myself, I can attest to that is a certain possibility that can often happen. So, nice. How about you girls? How's the week been? Normal. School going okay? Yeah. Are you all getting used to being back? I mean, you've been back in full time now, what, for a month? Everybody?
Well, I've been in school since it started.
Yeah, have you? Nice. So, okay, well, cool. A few things, a few announcements up here. Let's see, I already talked about that. Is there anything, I know that this has definitely been a weird year, a weird approach, and now, here we are into almost March already, and we're just kind of getting started. Any questions that you guys have based on what we've covered so far, things you might be wondering about, in terms of how's the rest of our program going to look, things like that. Any questions floating around in your heads? No, not really? Okay, awesome. So schedule-wise, we will probably continue meeting on Sundays now, unless we have another flare-up of COVID type stuff. We're probably going to be going through like mid-April. I would estimate maybe like 2 or 3 weeks past Easter. Easter is the first Sunday of April this year. And I think we'll probably get our classwork wrapped up like late April. Now, if you remember back to stuff that we had talked about or stuff that I put into a video kind of at the beginning of the year when we were looking at the year that we expected things to be, there were different things that we planned on, like acolyting or like helping out with Easter morning and things of that nature. I think most of that stuff is kind of going by the wayside this year. I know, John, you must be so disappointed because you've done all that stuff before. Next year, or starting next fall, when you guys are 8th graders, and man, you're in high school, hopefully next year that will begin to look a little bit more normal. This year we're just going to kind of keep working through our classwork and go with that. So hope that you guys continue to learn stuff and that you're enjoying what we're talking about. The thing with this, let me just put it out there. If you ever have a question, stop and ask me. Again, it's your job to get me off topic, right? But if you have questions, I love questions. And the more you guys talk and interact, the more fun I have, right? Because otherwise I'm just listening to myself and I get really bored, right? Yeah, okay. So if you see me moving around a lot, that means I'm getting excited and that you've done good things.
And your timelines.
And my timelines, because what do? I start over here, we're going down the timeline. Yeah, you'll find me doing that all the time. Maybe you've even seen me do that in some videos. Okay, so since it's the very first time, I'm not going to pick on anyone in terms of making them, or am I? Maybe I'll make John pray, because he's been through this before. Kick your head around.
Is it written?
It's written.
Okay.
But you know what? I'll handle it this time. Remember, the first prayer is the easy one because it's written. The last prayer is not. I am going to pick on you later. Have fun. So you can live in anticipation. Okay, let's pray. God of life, your Son performed numerous miracles for your glory. Help us to see that they point us to you. May we be like those first fishermen and obediently follow you. Thank you for sending Jesus not just for those who are rich and powerful, but for everyone, those who are saints and those who are sinners. Amen. Okay, so last time we had any sort of class, which granted now has been several weeks thanks to the weather in the last few Sundays, we talked about the temptation of Jesus. Now, do you remember how many different temptations did Jesus experience in the 40 days in the wilderness? Three. At least three that we know of, right? Yes. Okay. Satan tempts him with three different tactics. Does it work? No. And that's really good for us, right? Like we fall to temptation all the time. But Jesus did not, which is good because we need Jesus to overcome our sin, right? Right. Okay. If not, we would be in a whole lot of trouble. Now, what we talk about today might actually sound kind of familiar to you as we're talking about the calling of the first disciples. Now, you might remember that was our scripture lesson a few weeks back. I forget exactly what Sunday it was, but we talked about that, or I talked about that in the sermon that particular week. So if you happen to see that one, what we talk about today might sound familiar with that. So if we leave off with the wilderness temptation, we fast forward just a little bit. Jesus is getting to work, but as we mentioned before, the different gospels give us different details, right? They don't always line up perfectly. They give us some different details. We know at some point after Jesus was baptized, who baptized him?
John.
And what's John's cool title? John the what?
John the Baptist.
It's kind of right there in the name, right? Yep. Okay. So he's following the baptism of Jesus. John gets kind of mouthy. He's kind of a mouthy guy. And he mouths off about King Herod. Now, Herod is one of quite a few different guys, all named Herod. It's all the same family. You know how kings, usually their son kind of becomes king, and then their son becomes king, and then maybe they get a little strange, and then a brother becomes king, and then, or a nephew, or all that kind of weird, crazy stuff. All these different guys are named Herod, and they're all kind of really, really, really weird, and they're not really very nice people, right? Not nice at all. Okay, so John the Baptist mouths off to King Herod Antipas, which is a really weird name, but that's his name. And this lands him in prison, and eventually he ends up dead.
Gets beheaded.
He gets beheaded. And that's a really, really weird story. It's not a very nice story, but yeah, so John eventually gets beheaded. Now, this happens because Herod has a tendency for bad temper tantrums like his father, Herod the Great, if you've ever heard that name before. But because this is going on, Jesus thinks maybe it's a little bit dangerous for me to be out in the open. So he comes from the southern area around the city of Jerusalem. You've heard of Jerusalem. Yep, it's where the temple is. And he goes to the north to this region called Galilee. That's maybe another name you've heard before, a place you've heard. It's kind of like this little backwater area where the towns are pretty small, and he can sort of operate under the radar of the government. Is sort of what's going on at this point. So the Gospel of Mark gives us all of these different details in the first chapter and really in one verse. Mark is really short, right? Have you noticed that when we look at Mark, that Mark's like, we get like this much detail, and then the other Gospels are like tons and tons and tons and tons. So we hear that he's going out through that, and then Matthew kind of tells us the same sort of stuff, but gives us some quotations from some of those Old Testament prophets that we've talked about before. The Gospel of Luke tells us some other random stories. We hear about Jesus actually going to his hometown. Anybody remember where his hometown was?
Bethlehem.
Not Bethlehem, although that's where he was born. So yes, but no. Yes, Nazareth, which is a little bitty town in Galilee. He goes to his hometown. He preaches in the synagogue. He makes people really mad, which I think is kind of funny, but he does. They don't like it, so he travels around. He leaves and he travels around. He goes to Peter's mother-in-law's house, actually Peter's house, where he heals his mother-in-law. Now, this is before he's called any of the disciples. Okay. Some of these details sound like things that we've had in our Gospels that you've maybe heard me talk about. Yep, we've kind of had some of that. So within those first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we have different details, but we've seen this type of thing before. Then there's the fourth Gospel. What's the fourth Gospel? Anybody remember? John should know.
John.
Because it's John? Yep. So this one gives us some different details. We hear of a different order that the disciples are meeting Jesus, that they're kind of coming around and being around. We hear about Peter's brother Andrew. We hear about Philip and Nathaniel. Those are some names that we don't often or hear as often as the other ones. So we get some different details there. That being said, the different Gospels give us different stories, but we're focusing in today on Jesus calling the first disciples. Now, how many disciples are there?
12.
12. Can we name them all? This could be tricky. Let's see if we can do it together. What are some of the names of the disciples that you know?
Peter.
Peter's one.
John.
Yep. John.
Yep. John.
Okay.
Simon.
Simon is Peter. Same dude. Same dude, different names, which is weird, but we see that a lot in the Bible, right? Okay. You? Paul? Yes and no. What's different about Paul? I'm going to write his name down here. Paul is a disciple, but is he one of the original 12 disciples? Or does he come on the scene later on? Did I just give that all away?
Yeah.
Yeah, he comes on the scene later on. So yes, he is an apostle, which is another way of saying disciple, but he comes on later. Okay. Do we remember any of the other ones? We got Peter, we got John.
Judah?
Jude. Put an S on
Judith.
it. Judith.
Oh, Judas.
Judas. Yes, we got Judas. He's important because he's the one who eventually betrays Jesus, right? Yeah. So he gets a bad rap. All right. Anybody remember who John's brother is? Also starts with a J. James. Yep. James is another one. Anybody remember Peter's brother? Starts with an A. Ends with an Andrew. Andrew. Yep. Okay. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Man, we're not even halfway yet. There's another guy. We might shorten his name to Nate. Nathaniel, that's one. Yep. Who else do we have? We could.
The Zechariah one?
No. Zechariah is a Old Testament prophet. It's kind of hard, right? It's hard to come up. There's a second James. There's two Jameses, which is weird. You'd think I could do this easier. Andrew, Peter, John, James, Nathaniel, James the Lesser, Judas. Actually, Judas Iscariot, we'll say that. Because in some lists, there's another guy named Judas. Here's the funny thing. In one list, we have a set of names. In a different list, some of the names are different. What? Scary, right? Okay. Let's see. Everyone open up to Matthew chapter 10.
Zebedee?
Oh,
no, never mind.
Close, that's his dad.
Philip?
Philip's another one, yep.
Simon?
Simon is Peter.
Oh.
Finding it there, girls.
Thomas one?
Thomas is one. Oh,
Matthew.
right, there we go. Matthew chapter 10. Thomas is another one, yeah.
Matthew.
Matthew. How did we forget Matthew? That's one of the Gospels, for Pete's sake. That should have been an easy one. All right, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, we need 2 more. Who are we missing? Bartholomew. Yes. Some people think that Bartholomew and Nathan might have been, or Nathaniel, I should say, might have been 2 names for 2 different names for the same person, because they're ones that are different in the 2 different lists. But yep, now who are we missing in there? We got Judas Iscariot. Oh, there is another Simon. Yep, Thaddeus. Thaddeus. We got Thaddeus? We don't have Thaddeus. Okay. Thaddeus. There is a second Simon. You're right on that one. We got 2 Simons. We got 2 Jameses. We got 2 Judases if we look at the different lists. So, so depending on what list we're looking at, which gospel we're looking at, the names are ever so slightly different. Now, some of them are maybe a little bit more familiar than others, right? Like you've heard the names of Peter and James and John. They're kind of the main ones that we hear a lot about. Sometimes we'll hear about Andrew. We hear about Judas a lot. Of course, his part is important. What about Thomas? Are you familiar with Thomas? You ever heard his name before? Like, and maybe he doubts things, Doubting Thomas. Have you heard of him? Yep. Okay. So some of them we know a little bit about. Some of them we don't know anything about besides that their names are listed, which is kind of an interesting thing. But the long story short, Jesus had a bunch of disciples. But before he had disciples, he had to find them, right? That's kind of part of it. All right. So that's what we're going to check out today. Now, we have 4 Gospels. Does anyone know which one was written first, or what we think was written first? You've got a 1 in 4 chance.
Luke.
No. You now have a 1 in 3 chance.
Mark.
There you go. We think Mark was the first one that was written. So we're going to check out Mark's account first. So Mark is right after Matthew. So go to Mark chapter 1, and we're going to start in verse 16.
For my family members in Davenport got me the confirmation stuff, and they got me a comic book Bible.
Nice. I've seen those before. They're pretty awesome. Yep. If you dig like graphic novel type things, it's pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we're going to read verses 16 through 20. Riley, you want to read that for us?
Sure.
Okay.
As Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," Jesus said, "and I will make you fishers of men." At once they left their nets and followed him. When he had gone a little farther, he saw James, son of Zebedee,
Yep.
and his brother John in a boat preparing their nets. Without delay, he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed him.
Okay, so Jesus just walked along one day, and first he sees 2 dudes. Who are the first 2 that we hear about?
Simon and Andrew.
Simon and Andrew, who are brothers. And what do?
Fishermen.
They're fishermen. They're casting their nets. Okay, and he's like, "Hey guys, what's up? Let's go." And how do they respond? They go, right? So can you imagine that? Like you're just kind of doing your thing, and this random guy comes walking up to you who maybe you've met before and maybe you never have, and he's like, "Hey, let's go," and you just go. I mean, how would you respond? I think I'd be like, "Dude, leave. I'm doing things. Leave me alone." I don't know. Makes me wonder, like, what was so cool about Jesus? They're like, "Okay, cool, let's do it." I don't know, but that's what we hear about. Okay, so they're doing their job. They're doing their fisherman thing because that's what they do. They drop their nets and they follow Jesus. So, what do you think with that? When we encounter Jesus, however we do, is it going to happen like in some special moment? Like I'm going to set up an appointment to go talk to Jesus, and he's gonna like email me, and we're going to set something up, or does it just sort of happen in the midst of our day-to-day lives? What do you think? Yeah, it can just sort of happen anytime, and that's what we learn from that. Okay, so Jesus is on the shoreline. He's walking along. He's like, "Hey, Peter and Andrew," I forgot who it was for a second. It's like, "Let's hang out," and they're like, "Okay." And so he walks a few more steps, and then who does he bump into?
No?
James and John, yep, who are two more brothers. And what do?
They just leave their father.
Yeah.
They get out of the boat.
Yep, they do. So, but they're also fishermen, right? And their dad's with them. Their father's Zebedee. They leave him, and who knows what he was thinking? Maybe he's like, hey, where are you guys going? We got work to do. Or maybe he's like, can I come too? Might be fun. We don't know. But they pretty much do the same thing that the first two did. They just drop everything and they follow along. Okay, so how many has Jesus called so far? 4. 4 out of 12. Yep. That is pretty much the entire story in Mark. A lot of detail, right? Okay. We have other details to look at. So let's go to Luke. Everyone go to Luke chapter 5. Luke is the next one after Mark. Okay. Luke chapter 5. There we go. Okay, we are going to read verses 1 through 3. Julia, you want to take that for us, I should say.
Once while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw 2 boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out to them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowd from the boat.
Okay, so first thing to know, Gennesaret, or Gennesaret as you said it, that's also the Sea of Galilee. It's just another name for it. Same body of water. So what sounds familiar? What sounds the same as what we heard in Mark?
He meets up with Peter.
Yep, he meets with Peter. He's just kind of walking along the shore, right? Now in this one, we hear that the crowds are already trying to listen to him. We've something different in Luke's gospel compared to Mark's. We already hear that he's sort of like set up his home in the city of Capernaum, which is where Peter and James and John, all these guys are from. It's right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and there's a lot of fishermen, whole bunches of them. And we hear that he's been in the synagogue preaching. We hear he's already been active. So the crowds are already like, hey, there's something special about this guy. Let's go check him out. So as he's along the shoreline, everyone's pressing in on him. Now, do you think they had a great big bandstand or stage for him to be on? No, not really. Do you think he had a portable sound system? Keep in mind this was 2,000 years ago. So it was probably sort of hard to be able to see him or hear him, right? So does that kind of make you understand why he got in the boat and like to get out in front of everyone so they could see him out on the water? Okay, and we hear he gets in the boat of Peter. All right, let's continue. Let's now read verses 4 through 8. Julie, will you continue, please?
When he finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man."
Okay, so we find out that Peter, at least, and whoever else is with him, they've been out fishing all night. That's how fishing worked. They fished at night because apparently fish are a little more active at night, I guess. I used to fish a lot when I was younger. I haven't for a long time, so I'm out of practice. But that seems to be the case, that they do their fishing at night. So the whole night's gone by, and how many fish have they caught? 0. It's been kind of a bad night. And if you make your living as a fisherman and you sell all the fish that you catch to make money for your family, and you've not caught any fish all night, and you've worked all night, do you think you're in a good mood?
No.
Probably not. It stands to reason that Peter was kind of like, I'm not happy right now. Why are you bothering me? But Jesus is like, I want you to do something. Put the net on the deep side of the water. Now, why do you think that might be significant? Are the fish going to be in the deep water, or are they going to be more in the shallow water? Oh, maybe so. Depending on the type of fish, right?
True.
But at night, the big fish, the ones that you're wanting to catch, they're going to come up near the shoreline to eat all the bait fish that's up there. See, I have fished before. I actually do know some of this stuff. So they're going to do most of their fishing along the shoreline. Jesus is telling them, put out into the deep water. Based on what I've said right now, do you think that would make sense to Peter and the other guys? No. But what do we hear from Peter? What does he say? He's like, we haven't caught anything, but okay. And now I have to remember, have we talked about that? Yeah, we have. Okay, and what happens?
You catch a bunch of fish.
Yeah, and not just like a few, like tons and tons. So many that the net's beginning to break. So Peter calls all of his partners to come in. They catch so many fish that the boat's going to sink, so they have to call in reinforcements. So this seems to be a good thing. This almost seems to be impossible, right? Because do you catch fish during the day, or do you catch them at night? You can, but when do you usually catch it?
Evening to
Right, evening and overnight. So it seems almost this impossible thing, like it might be called miraculous. You see what I did there? Yeah. Peter recognizes this to be a miracle. He realizes that this is seemingly impossible, and he recognizes Jesus to be at least special. He knows there's something special about Jesus, and he calls him Lord. Let's go on and read 9 through 11. Bailey, you want to read that for us?
For he and all those with him were amazed at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, Zebedee's sons, who were Simon's partners. Don't be afraid, Jesus told Simon. From now on you will be catching people. Then they brought the boats to land, left everything and followed him.
Okay, so now we hear about some of those other names that we've heard, James and John, who seem to be partners with Peter, and I suppose Andrew's along with him too, even though we don't hear his name. Yeah, he's probably there too. So Jesus tells Peter, what does Jesus say to Peter? It's like, follow me and I will have you do what?
Fisher of men.
Fisher of men. What in the world does that mean? What do you think? If you're a fisherman, or what do?
You fish.
For?
Men.
Fish.
For fish. You fish for fish. Yep. So if you're a fisher of men or a fisher of people, what's that kind of sound like? You're trying to find people. You're trying to capture people. Now, like, that seems a little weird, right? As soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, that's a weird way of putting it. But do you think it was like, okay, we're going to capture people to, like, I don't know, like kidnap them and do, like, hold them for ransom or something? Or is it to capture their hearts, capture their attention, things like that? Like, if you see something really cool, does it capture your attention? Yeah. Has something fished for, I don't know, that's weird, right? It's a weird thing to think about, but do you understand kind of what that is talking about? Yeah, okay. So, Jesus says this to them, and we hear that they just leave everything and follow him, right? So that's kind of the same as what we heard in Mark's gospel. Okay, so if they left everything behind, what all did they leave?
The fish.
They left the fish. What do they do for a living?
Fish.
How do they make money?
By selling the fish.
By selling the fish. So think about that. They've got this huge catch of fish, which is probably worth a lot of money, and they just leave it and go. So whatever it was that Jesus is inviting them into, whatever it was that was so compelling about Jesus, it makes them leave not only the fish, but also their nets and also their boats, which, that's their livelihood right there too. They leave everything behind and just take off. Now, do you think they said, this stuff is ours, no one touch it? And even if they had, do you think people would have left it all alone? Because they're off wandering around and, well, there's some boats here. We're going to take them. There's some fish here. We're not going to let that go to waste. So they left all of this stuff behind, all this stuff that's of great value to them in order to follow Jesus. And I think that's pretty cool.
Wait, isn't like the father, like, is it Zebedee still there?
Zebedee, oh, he is, isn't he? Yeah. We don't hear that detail quite. We hear that Zebedee's there, but we don't necessarily hear the detail that they left him like we heard in Mark. But we do know that because of the other gospel, right? That they just left him behind. Now, we also hear that they've got some hired men that work for him too. So who knows? Maybe that business continues without James and John along. But yes, you're right. That Zebedee is still there, and we don't really know what happens to him after that. Okay. Let's see. We already talked about that. What do you think about fishing? Do any of you like to fish?
Yeah.
Yeah? You enjoy it? You think it'd be a fun way to make your living?
No.
No, not really.
Not
You ever,
my luck.
not, yeah. Yeah. You ever seen the show Deadliest Catch?
Yes.
That's about crab fishing. And they live on boats in the Bering Sea. Apparently it's quite deadly, hence the name. But do you think it's like fishing, is it a glamorous job?
No.
Like, does it sound fun?
Maybe to some people.
Maybe to some people, but so you're working with fish. Fish tend to kind of stink, right? You're always casting your nets in water, and when you pull them back up, you're probably getting all wet and gross from the net. When do they work? They work at night. They work out on the water. Now, the interesting thing about the Sea of Galilee is there are mountains all the way around it. It's really a big lake. It's like 10 miles long and like 6 or 7 miles wide. So it's a really nice sized lake, but there's mountains around it. And storms can like blow up out of nowhere very, very quickly and come rolling down the mountains and hit you out when you're in the middle of the sea. And that can happen without warning. So stands to reason that a lot of those boats probably got knocked over, right? And so maybe it could be like Deadliest Catch Galilee style. I don't know. But not the greatest thing in the world, or not the most glamorous job in the world. But these are the first people that Jesus calls to be his disciples, to be his followers. So we know 4 of them are fishermen. But we've got 12 or maybe even a couple extra than that, other people. Do we know the professions of any of the rest of them?
I think Matthew's a tax collector.
Matthew is a tax collector. We know that Judas is a thief. We hear that in John's gospel. One of them, the other Simon, is called Simon the Zealot, which means he's basically, his job is that he's a revolutionary. He doesn't like the Romans that are in charge, and so he essentially works as a revolutionary. That doesn't sound real nice, does it? Okay. Do we know anything about the rest of them? Not really. We really don't. But none of them seem to have a really impressive resume, do they? Except maybe Matthew, who's a tax collector. Except that he works for the Romans. And do they like the Romans?
Nope.
No. So maybe we don't like him very much either. So Jesus calls a bunch of people that seemingly have like really lowly work, or people that we just don't know much about. And I think that's pretty cool, because that reminds us that Jesus calls very common people. And we're all common people, right? Jesus calls and uses people for different reasons. Now, do you think that these individuals all had different things that they were good at? And maybe they all had things that they, at the same time, they weren't very good at? And do you suppose that all those things were the same? Like, did all 12 guys have the same things they were all really good at?
No.
Probably not, right? So do you think maybe Jesus called each of them for a specific reason, even if we don't know what those reasons are? I think so. And I think likewise, we're all called in the same way for that Jesus uses the strengths that we have as well. Okay. Whew. We talked about this a little bit before. What title did we give to these guys that we're talking about today?
Apostles.
Oh, shh. You're getting ahead of me. We call them disciples, right? But then John just mentioned apostles. We talked about apostles with Paul earlier too. There is a distinction between the two. Do you know what it is? Or do you think they mean the same thing?
I think they mean the same thing.
There's yes and no, right? We can use both titles and sort of mean the same thing, but a disciple is a person who follows after. So in this case, a follower of Jesus. Now, apostle means one who's actually sent by God with a message.
Oh, yeah.
So think about it. We know that Jesus is around for a while, and then he has a really bad day on Good Friday, and then he has a really good day on Easter, and then he hangs around for a little while longer, and then where does he go? Into the ceiling? He goes back to heaven, right? Are the disciples still around? With one exception? Yeah. The disciples are still around. Now, do they just say, well, I guess we're just going to go back to normal and it's like Jesus never happened? No. They are the start of the church, right? And they travel all over the place, all over the known world. And what do they do as they're traveling around?
They spread the word.
They spread the gospel, right? The gospel of Jesus. They're sent by Jesus. They're actually empowered by Jesus with this message of the gospel. They're sent by Jesus. So that's what makes them apostles. And what I love that you brought up Paul's the same way. He just comes from a different background. And his calling and sending happens later on, which is pretty awesome. And he's pretty important because he wrote like a lot of the New Testament, right? Like all those various letters, not all of them, but a lot of those various letters that come after the Gospels, Paul wrote a lot of those. Okay. So what do you think? We have disciple, apostle. Very similar, but are they the same thing? Not quite. Can you be both? Can you be one and not the other?
Yes.
I think so. And I think we have examples also in the Gospels of people who were disciples, not the disciples, but they were disciples of Jesus. They were followers of Jesus who then were not sent by Jesus or sent by God to carry it. They were just followers. And I think that's an important distinction. Okay. I've talked enough. What do you think? Interesting story? Kind of. What do you like? What's the most amazing part of this?
That everyone just like stops what they're doing and just follows him.
Isn't that nuts? I think that too. I know I said it before. It's like, follow me. Okay, let's do this. Yeah, isn't that cool? What else?
I like how Jesus just like found people that people didn't like very much because they thought they were just like, I don't know, they just didn't like them very much. And he just like showed people that they weren't like that then.
Yeah, nice. What about you, Bailey? Yeah. It's interesting. You brought that up, Julia. I was thinking about, have we heard that sort of thing in one of our stories that we've talked about before? Maybe one that happens around Christmas time, when people that you wouldn't think or you wouldn't expect. Who am I talking about?
Mary and Joseph.
Mary and Joseph, but who else in the story?
The shepherd.
There you go. Because the shepherds, they've got kind of you want to talk about a lowly job. That's even lower than being a fisherman, is being a shepherd in that time. And yet that's who the angel shows up to, right? Yeah. So we see this type of thing over and over and over again. And I really appreciate that, not only in the Gospels, not only with the disciples, but throughout. We've talked about that in a lot of the different videos that we've had about how God keeps using unexpected people. And that makes me feel pretty good because there's times when I'm like, whoa, God, what are you thinking calling me? Have you met me? I'm weird. Right? Yeah. Okay, weird. But, okay. Any questions as we wrap up today? Anything that you're wondering about, like, wow, that was really weird. I don't know what to think of that. Okay. John, I'm picking on you. Pray us out here, buddy.
Thank you for this day, amen.
Oh, you kept it short. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week, unless you're hanging out for worship, in which case I'll see you in there.